Good morning. Let me turn that off. Go ahead and mute yourselves as you come on. Let's see. Or I'll try to mute you as well. Mute and John and Dwight, I can't mute you, so see if you can mute yourselves. Okay. We have a new one today, a new class. I'm really excited to teach this class. First of all, you can head on over to the Art Appreciation main website, and if you hover over lessons, or you can click, let me move, I don't know why that's there. Okay. Hover over lessons, and then you can click on lessons and then just go down to today's date, which is 11/21. And we have two artists today, Ellsworth Kelly and Gabriel Daw. And let me get myself to the PowerPoint over here. And then, so I did ask you, I don't know if you had time to, or if you just click on 9 a.m. at 9 a.m. Hold on, I can hear some people. What happened to my screen here? Oh, there we go. Some of you have some loud people talking in the background, and it's very loud. Okay, there we go, all fixed. Okay, so back to Gabriel Daw and Ellsworth Kelly. Here is a short bio, but I'm going to give you the info anyway, but that's a little more expanded. Then there are some wonderful videos on Ellsworth Kelly and a movie apparently that you can find, but they've broken this one into 4 short parts, so I put them all down. He's a great guy who recently passed in 2015, but luckily we got a lot of good recordings from him. He's great at talking about his art, and we'll do a short little video of his later. So here's some of his work, and we'll talk about that. Don't want to spoil the surprise. And then down here we have Gabriel Daw. There's a short bio about him. And I will say with Ellsworth Kelly, and a lot of the photographs we're not able to save. They shrink them down so much when you try to save a photograph online. So just Google them so you can see more of their work. Gabriel Daw is someone that I came across interestingly after I had done a very similar thing in a show of my own, which I didn't even know this guy existed, but it's pretty amazing to see his work as well. So let's get to, then down at the bottom, I asked you to watch this video. I don't know if you got a chance to, but it really breaks down abstraction and the history of it in a very easy and concise way to understand. So we are talking about 2 abstract artists today. No, not new slide, oops. Okay, so Ellsworth Kelly's on the left, and he was born in 1923 in Newburgh, New York, and he died in 2015 in Spencertown, New York. He studied at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn from 1941 to 1943, and then from 1943 to 45, he joined the military. The military, during that time, there was some sponsorship by the government paying for artists. There was also some, the GI Bill helped a lot of these artists who then spent time in the military to go do other things. So then in 1946 to 48, after the military, he studied at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. He went there for 2 years, and then he went to Paris on the GI Bill. And there's a few other artists who did that. I think Rauschenberg was one, Pollock maybe, I can't remember, but several artists who studied in the military then used their GI Bill to go to school in Europe and study art there. So that's what he did as well. While he was there, he met some interesting people, and he traveled all through France, and he really developed his style while he was there. Then in 1954, he came back to the US, and he had a show at Ben's Gallery. Isn't she the one who's in jail right now for tax evasion? I think so, but I can't remember. And then in 1956, so he had his first solo show, which apparently wasn't a very big success. In one interview, he said that no one really even came and it was sort of just completely ignored. But still, from then, he gained more and more traction and became one of the biggest non-objective minimalist artists ever to walk the earth. And no one really can. Ellsworth Kelly has done the plain, simple canvas, and no one else can really copy that. So he's come up with something. Anyway, we'll get into that after I talk about. So then he had a good career. He started showing at the museums, and from there he became one of the biggest living artists ever known. So he's up there with David Hockney and all those other folks. So then later in the end of his life, he moved back to near his hometown near in Chatham, but that's near Spencertown. And he built a studio there, and he had a wonderful house. By that time, he had made plenty of money, and so he has this gorgeous studio out in the forest, and he paints. He loves light. He loves life. He considers himself very much like a living in the present person, and his work really expresses that, which I'll talk about more after I talk about Gabriel Daw. So Gabriel Daw has a much shorter bio because he was only born in 1973. So what does that make him? Around 43 years old, something like that. You know me in numbers. But he was born in Mexico City, and when someone had sent me an article with a photograph of his work, because I'm really into textiles and textile art, anything made from fiber. In fact, I have yarn and needle in my hand right now. I didn't even realize it. But he uses not yarn. He uses, what is this called? Thread. He uses thread to make his pieces all out of like 80 miles worth of thread. So he is pretty young, 1973, born in Mexico City. When he was young, he was very interested in textile work, but traditionally in Mexico, the textile embroidery is meant for women to do, and that's just a long tradition over all cultures. I think that embroidery is traditionally, I can hear you talking, somebody. Okay. There goes one of you. Okay, I think I've done it now. Okay, so sorry, I get really distracted when I can hear tons of noises, and I'm sure you can't hear either. So try to mute yourself when you come on if you're coming on a few minutes late. And yeah, I can still hear someone talking. Someone's got background talking going on, like a TV on or something in the background. It's John. There we go. Okay, now it's fixed. Okay, so Gabriel Daw, born in Dallas, then he went and got his MFA at Dallas, Texas. And he in there was a graphic designer for 10 years before that, or within that. And he decided, I can't do this anymore. I can't work for other people. I need to make art for myself. I don't want to be making art for a client. I want to be making art for me. And he talks very much about his obsessive personality. So he came up with this new thing, which he calls installation. This is an image of one of his installations here in the bottom right. And he's using a long strip of wood, and then he's attached hooks to all of these. And I'm telling you, I did the exact same thing without knowing this guy existed. It's the weirdest thing. Only I used yarn instead of thread. And the thread is a really important part of this with how thin the thread is, because it's creating sort of an optical illusion. So what you're looking at looks like a translucent sculpture, but what it really is thousands of strings of thread that have gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he's even invented a giant needle, as he calls it, with a really long stick so he can reach up and then reach down and put it up and down without too much help. At this point, some of his work has, he's doing a series of what he calls plexus, and plexus has to do with the threads of the nervous system. I've just got to mute whoever's talking right now. Okay, well, I'm just gonna keep going, but if you're not muted, please try to figure out how to mute yourself. Okay, so, and then on the top, we have Ellsworth Kelly. Nope, can't do it. Okay, let me try this for the 5th time. I've got to figure out how to make this muted when you guys come on. It's just driving me absolutely crazy. Okay, so this is on the top left corner. We have a series, we have a painting by Ellsworth Kelly, and what you're looking at here is a canvas, or 3 different canvases put together, I'm not sure, and they are a single color. So he calls it plain and ground. So like a plane, and the ground is the paint. He uses a lot of terms that I use when he talks about his work, and he is inspired by nature. He is inspired by everything around him. So don't be confused. These are not of nothing. They have come from inspiration of something that he's seen in earth. You know, he talks about a wall that he was really excited about, and I saw that wall and I just thought it was so beautiful, and it's really like just a wall that has a little piece, you know, a little further out. It's nothing special, but he found the beauty in it, and that's what these works are mimicked after. So I love the breakdown of abstraction that you got in the first 10-minute video. I hope that you watched that, because it really talks about how after photography came, we didn't have the need to render people perfectly. We didn't need to paint them perfectly. We had paint, but we also had photography. So then people thought, well, you know, we can do other things with this paint, and that started Impressionism and Expressionism, and then abstraction, and all of these things in the last 100 years have grown out of that. So we have a lot to thank to photography, or if you hate abstract art, maybe you don't want to thank photography for what's come out of the need, and no longer having a need to paint portraits, basically, because the camera's doing it for you, which allows you to use the material in different ways. So my
comparison, not seeing any pictures. We only see your face. There's several of us who cannot see any of the pictures.
Oh, well, why didn't you tell me before? I don't, so you haven't seen any of the pictures?
None.
Why didn't anyone tell me that? Oh, there's 8 comments. Here we go. Katie, we can't see any of the pictures. All right. Thank you for telling me. Pam, you're wonderful. Okay. Maybe I'll pre-record these from now on, because it's just not working to do it with everybody online. I know that defeats the purpose, but it's so distracting, nothing gets done. Okay, so now can you see the image? So the first image that I showed, I've only showed this one. So all you've missed is this, yes, okay. So sorry about that, everybody. So all that you've missed is this one picture that I showed. This is Ellsworth Kelly, and this is Gabriel Daw, and then this is a blank one. And then I went to this one right here. So we're looking at thousands of miles worth of thread down at the bottom here. And at the top, we're looking at 3 plain panels of, thank you, everybody. You're wonderful. Yeah, sorry, I didn't, for some reason, it's not showing up your notices, and the screen is showing up different today than normal, so I'm not sure why that's happening. But anyway, we're just gonna forget the technical difficulties. We have internet. We're going. Okay, so this is thousands of pieces of threads that you're looking at, and it's creating an optical illusion. It's a shame that you don't get to see them in person, although maybe someday he'll do an installation in San Diego, because these things really need to be walked around on all sides. And you can really, they change. I don't know if you've ever seen like a bunch of threads together, but they really move and change and create optical illusions within, just by, it sort of messes with your eye is what he says. And some people really love it because it creates almost like a prism frozen in space. It's almost like color frozen in space, which I guess could be what Ellsworth Kelly is doing too. But what you're looking at is thousands of pieces of thread that have been strung up and down like this and hooked to those hooks on long pieces of wood. And then at the top, you're looking at 3 plain and ground panels. Now, one thing, actually, I'll wait to talk about that until I get to the specific piece. So both of these artists are very interested in color. They're interested in minimalism, and in a way, they're both doing installation art. Now, Ellsworth Kelly doesn't specifically say that he's an installation artist. He says that he's a painter, but then he also says that his paintings, he uses the wall as the canvas, essentially. Like, he's saying these pieces work on the wall, and the wall is essentially the canvas. Like, it is the work of art. The whole wall is the work of art. It's not the individual pieces on the wall and these simple shapes that he's making, but it is these 3 shapes that he put on this one wall specifically. So even though he's not thinking of them as installation, he is, because he's saying, you know, I use the wall. The wall is also my canvas. Even though he's not specifically painting on the canvas, he's putting a canvas, he's not specifically painting on the wall. He's putting the canvas onto the wall in a specific way, a turn, a twist, those simple shapes, which is installation in itself. So I hope you're enjoying these amazing rainbows. And if you're not a fan of rainbow and color, then this is probably not your favorite class. But it's really beautiful to see. He's done, I think, 30, and I'm talking about Gabriel on the right, a series of 20 to 30 installations all over the US, Canada, and probably internationally now. But he's been working on this project for several years, where he goes, and these pieces are installed not permanently, unfortunately, but and I'm surprised to say, you know, they don't, like, it seems like this one, another artwork wouldn't really be in the way of it, you know, so why wouldn't they keep it up? But, you know, galleries change their shows all the time, so it's probably up for a year. I don't know where the current ones are up right now, but I'm sure that you could look into that. Now, Ellsworth Kelly on the left here, again, we're looking at a series of squares, some colors of squares, blocks of colors, and plain white colors. I don't know where his inspiration came from, but I do know that he's always inspired by life and earth, and he lives in the present moment as much as possible. So, you know, you can assume that he's gone around and maybe found inspiration from stained glass windows or something like that, that maybe inspired him, or maybe he saw lights. But then what he does is he goes into his studio and he pares it down. What do I need? What do I need to put? How can I describe this beautiful curve of nature, or this beautiful color of nature, in the most minimalistic way possible? So that's what he's trying to do. Pare it down to the bare minimum, where it's still mimicking earth, it's still mimicking life, and it has a simplicity, a sophistication, a boldness, a quietness, and, you know, we can consider someone like Hilma af Klint. We can consider someone like Agnes Martin. These people, Kandinsky, who are all these minimalist artists who were doing things, they were inspired by earth or spirit, but then they pared it down. So it's almost like you draw the whole thing, and then you take your eraser and you take out everything that no longer works, and you figure out, oh, maybe he ends up with one curve that he liked, and it turns into a corner, and then from that he finds the simple shape, and then he makes one plain ground. Here they are, plain ground pieces in space. So these are 3. He's also one of the first people to ever use a regular shaped canvas, besides like a circle or a square or rectangle. So here we have a triangle, but they're irregular shapes, right? These are canvases. They are unique shapes that are based on something in earth that he's seen, something in life that he was inspired by. I don't know what it was, but then he's placed them on the wall, and that's why I consider this piece an installation. He's placed them on a wall, and he's considering the wall. Even the name of the piece has something to do with the wall, like 3 triangles on a wall or something like that. I don't know what it's called, but it has to do with the wall. The wall essentially becomes the canvas in this case. or the installation space. Just like down here, down here, we see the piece. This is more of a close-up view where you can really sort of see through some of the threads. So I wanted to show that, where you're sort of looking in through the threads. But then other moments, these are all threads, but they almost look like a complete full piece. You know, it could be like a piece of material. It's almost so thick from some angles. So then here are more simple shapes, and these simple shapes are not simple at all, right? These are beautiful, simplistic moments that are talking as much to each other as they are to the viewer. I'm talking about these shapes up here. You know, when I talk about negative spaces, well, you could either consider the blue and red negative, or you can consider the whites negative, however you want to think about it. Each part in this piece of rectangle, we'll say this is an individual rectangle, excuse me, I'm not sure if it is, but, or if it's a triptych, but each piece is, everything is necessary. There's not one thing that could be left out that would make these pieces work better. Does that make sense? So what I'm saying is, if you took out this black shape and just had this yellow shape on a white ground, it would not be as powerful as it is. So this is, again, it's about simplicity. It's about, what do I really need to be left with in a painting? What can I leave out? I don't feel the need to render. I don't feel the need to do anything but find the simplest form, like the most direct approach to the inspiration that I felt. I'm saying it as if I were him, but I'm just taking the words out of his mouth, but he didn't say that. I'm making it up. But that's how he described his work when he was talking about it in the 10 interviews I saw. That's what I gathered from it. So installation is a really beautiful thing if you have a beautiful space to work in. Look at this space that Gabriel got to work in. Another thing about Gabriel is that I just assumed that he was a woman. I just saw the fiber work and I just thought, okay, Gabriel must be a woman. I'll do that. And then I started looking into it and I realized, oh, he's a man. He's a man from Mexico. And he's a man who felt like he wasn't allowed to play with textiles and fibers at a young age. And I find that to be quite sad. Although it's wonderful because everything happens for a reason, and that's what pushed his career and pushed him to do something. You know, at this point, he's like, if I want to play with thread and fiber, I'm going to play with thread and fiber, but I'm going to do it in a completely new way. So both of these artists, I feel, are pioneers in their own way. Ellsworth Kelly had a really long, amazing career, and he, you know, you're not going to see anyone else who does this because Ellsworth Kelly did it so well that no one can copy him. No one can do it the way that he did it. And it's already been done, so you can't do it again. You have to invent something new. Same with Gabriel Dahl. You know, thread is how many thousands of years old. We've been using thread in our clothing and blankets and sheets, and we use it to make so many things, but not very often to make installation art. And this is so both of these artists are innovators, they're pioneers. The difference with Kelly is that he was doing it at a much earlier time, before it was cool, definitely before it was cool. In fact, he was probably attacked for some of his work, and some of his work was completely ignored because it was so out of the box. Here's another one. So here, you know, looking at this piece by Ellsworth Kelly, I wonder, you know, was he up in an airplane and was he looking down at the landscape and the ocean, or was something else going on? I don't know. But now that I know that he's really pulling these from things in life, it started to get me thinking, you know, is that abstract if it is coming from life? Or is it not abstract because it actually is derived from something? But I also think if you just keep breaking down figuration and every other type of artwork, the more you break it down, you break it down, you break it down, everything is abstract, right? And I say that in my class all the time, in my figure drawing, in my landscape drawing. Look for the simple shapes. Break it down into the most basic shapes that you can find: squares, rectangles, triangles, curves. And that's what Ellsworth Kelly's done. He's just taken it down to the absolute bare minimum. And then, you know, he'll paint these panels several different times to find the exact color. I thought it was funny how messy his studio was. There's literally blobs of paint everywhere, but I'm like, but you only used one color for the whole painting. How could you make that much of a mess? I guess he put several different types of layers of colors down to find the correct color. This is probably just a certain view of the threads, and so it's creating a shape. So that's another thing to think about. Even though this is 100% abstract work, you still find diamonds or maybe figures within this piece. So even if you mean for something to be abstract, the viewer might see something completely different. So to me, I kind of feel like abstraction and figuration are the same thing, if that makes sense, because everything figurative breaks down into everything abstract, and everything abstract builds up to something figurative. This was the flyer for Ellsworth Kelly's first solo show at Betty Parsons Gallery. And you can see, can you imagine in 1957 seeing a flyer like this and thinking, yeah, is that art? You know, people were really worried about what was art at that time. If you can imagine, everything sort of just exploded with photography, and all these artists are like, oh, we're going to go this way now, and this way. We're going to go cubist, and we're going to go minimalist, and we're going to go abstract, and we're going to go non-objective. And then out of that came the simplest form, and it's a beautiful shape, this shape that he's created, but it's a very simple form, and the negative spaces are as important as the positive forms. And then in this one of these last plexus pieces here, I put it because the colors are different. Most of his are all rainbows, but this one has more of a minimalist approach to the color, which I found a little more interesting. I mean, and a rainbow is great, and Lord knows I love rainbows. I just had a show based on rainbows, but sometimes we could use something other than just a full spectrum of color. I think there's something to Ellsworth Kelly's very thoughtful process on finding the perfect blue. And I don't think that Gabriel Daw, unless he starts hand dyeing his threads, which I don't think he's going to do, he's limited to what colors are pre-made for him. So that's another interesting thought process on it. Let's see what time I got here. Ooh, I have a few minutes to show you. I just want to show you this video. Escape. Oh, I guess I didn't finish my PowerPoint. The last thing I wanted to say about Gabriel is that when these pieces come down, what do you do with all the thread? So here he is, he's wrapped himself in the thread. But what I love about this idea is that he actually gets a second life out of these installations. So he's created something out of all the threads on the right. Sometimes he fills plexiglass boxes with the stacks of thread, and sometimes he puts them on canvas, and sometimes he does something like this. So it's sort of interesting to see that his installation then becomes a second piece, which then can also be sold, I guess. So that is another thought. And also he talks a lot about the density of the threads when they come down, and how, before they were these thin, very straight lines, and when they come down, they're this very dense mess, and it just becomes a completely different thing. So I like that idea too, how we transform our art from one time to another, how we deal with installation art, how art doesn't have to be only one thing and then that's the end of its life. Like, why not bring it back to life and make another thing out of it if you still have the materials available at your disposal? I just got a whole bunch of yarn back from my last installation, and I'm going to turn it into something new, completely new and different too. And I even have my pal Margot on today, and she helped me make like 300, 400 maybe puff balls. I don't even know how many, but yeah, we've been making puffballs and textiles for so long, and now I get to make those into something completely different. Let me see. Margot says it was fun. So feel free. And Natalka made puffballs. Several of you made puffballs for me. So now I'm going to reuse that material for something different. I just want to spend the last few minutes. I think this is a 3-minute video. Oh, the wrong guy. Showing you exactly how Ellsworth Kelly thinks and sees in 2 minutes and 16 seconds.
There's a restaurant here where I used to eat all the time.
Sorry, I'm gonna expand it. So this is when he's in Paris and he's going through and he's talking about,
and I used to go in here to take my bath once a week. In that doorway over there. And over here, I used to buy my paint colors. And over here's the hotel. Those 2 windows up there were my studio. I'm not sure which one it is. No, maybe that's it there.
We don't see the video.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. Well, okay, I'm just gonna stop there. I don't know why that's not working. They've updated this thing. So anyway, I give up. But what you can do is just watch it right here online. It's 2 minutes long, so I think all of these videos are quite short. So I thank you for your patience while we figure out this technical difficulties. But anyway, that's all I have to say about those two. Do anyone want to comment, or you can leave a comment or have anything you want to say? And let me know if I cut out. I think my internet actually did quite well this week, so that's good. And I do have new internet, so hopefully that problem is over. And I'm sorry that the video, but you can just watch it on the website. And I guess that's 30 minutes now, so I will go. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I thank you so much for letting me know that you couldn't see the screen. So speak up if that happens. Thank you to Pam, and I will try to figure out what the heck is going on. All right, thanks everybody. Bye.